There's something about you that's always felt different. You've sensed it since childhood, like a quiet whisper in the back of your mind, telling you that you weren't like everyone else. Maybe you felt things before they happened. Maybe certain places, certain people, certain moments felt strangely familiar, like echoes of something greater. But no one ever explained why. Instead, they told you to ignore it, to be normal, to fit in. And for a while, maybe you tried. But no matter how much you silenced that feeling, it never truly went away, did it? Because deep down, a part of you always knew you were meant for something more. And today you're finally going to understand why. Stay until the end, because once you see the truth, you'll never look at your life the same way again. I'd like to ask you to subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Some people move through life without ever questioning who they are or why they feel the way they do. They follow the path laid out for them, never looking too deeply, never wondering if there's something more. But for you, it was never that simple, was it? There was always something different about you, something you couldn't quite explain, yet could never ignore. And it started long before you even had the words to describe it. Think back to your childhood. The way you saw the world, the way you felt things so intensely, the way you always seemed to notice things that others missed. Did you ever feel like you were standing on the edge of reality, watching life unfold rather than fully being in it? Like you were meant for something different, something beyond the ordinary? Maybe you tried to dismiss it, to tell yourself that everyone feels this way at some point. But deep down, you knew better. This wasn't just a passing thought. It was a knowing, a whisper that followed you through the years, reminding you that you were set apart from the very beginning. And it wasn't just a feeling, it was something real. It showed up in small but undeniable ways. The way you could sense people's emotions before they even spoke. The way you felt deeply connected to things others didn't seem to notice. The way you seemed to understand things far beyond your years, as if you had carried wisdom with you from somewhere else. And then there were the dreams, the ones that felt too vivid, too meaningful to be just imagination. The moments of déjà vu, the sense that you had been here before, that you had seen this, felt this, lived this. But no one ever explained what this meant. No one told you why you were this way. Instead, they told you to stop being so sensitive, to stop thinking so much, to stop questioning everything. They taught you to dismiss what you felt, to push it aside, to pretend it wasn't real. And for a while, maybe you tried. You tried to fit in, to silence that part of you, to convince yourself that you were just imagining things. But no matter how much you tried, the feeling never truly went away. Because how could it? It was never something outside of you. It was something within you. Something that had been with you from the very start. And if you really look back, you'll realize the signs were always there. The moments when you felt protected, even when you should have been in danger. The times when you just knew something before it happened. The way certain places, certain people, certain experiences felt strangely familiar, as if they were meant to be part of your story long before you arrived. These weren't coincidences. They weren't just tricks of the mind. They were clues. Clues that you weren't just anyone. You were someone meant for something different. But here's the thing about being different. It doesn't always feel like a gift. Especially when you're young, when all you want is to belong, when all you crave is understanding. And yet, no matter how much you longed to be like everyone else, there was always that part of you that refused to conform. The part of you that questioned things, that felt things too deeply, that couldn't just go through the motions like everyone else. And at times that made life harder. It made you feel alone. It made you wonder if something was wrong with you. But what if I told you that the very things that made you feel out of place were never flaws, but signs? That they weren't meant to isolate you, but to show you who you truly are? Because the truth is, the ones who are meant for something greater never feel like they belong in the beginning. They always sense it before they understand it. They always feel the weight of their purpose before they know what it is. And for a long time, they struggle. They doubt. They wonder why they can't just be like everyone else. But eventually they realize being different was never a mistake. It was always the first step. And now you have a choice. You can keep ignoring it, keep convincing yourself that maybe you were just imagining things. Or you can finally see the truth for what it is. That you were never just an ordinary soul. That from the very beginning, you were meant for something more. And once you recognize that, once you finally allow yourself to see the signs that have been there all along, there's no turning back. Because the moment you open your eyes to the truth, you can never unsee it. And the question is, now that you know this, what are you going to do about it? Before continuing with our spiritual evolution, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to our channel. Thank you. There are things in life that only make sense when you look back. At the time, they felt like random moments, strange coincidences, feelings you couldn't explain. But now, as you begin to piece everything together, you start to see a pattern, a design, a message that was there all along, waiting for you to finally understand. Think about it. There were times when you felt things before they happened. A gut instinct, an unshakable knowing that guided you in ways that even you didn't fully comprehend. Maybe you had dreams so vivid they felt like memories, glimpses of something beyond this world. Maybe you were drawn to certain places, certain people, certain ideas that others overlooked, as if something deep inside you recognized them before your mind even had the chance to catch up. And then there were the moments when you felt protected, like something unseen was watching over you. Times when you should have been in danger, but somehow, at the last second, something pulled you away. Maybe you avoided an accident without knowing why. Maybe you changed your mind about something at the last moment, only to realize later that it saved you from a path that wasn't meant for you. Or maybe you've simply felt, since as far back as you can remember, that you were never truly alone. But the world doesn't teach you to pay attention to these things. It tells you that they're nothing more than imagination, coincidences, tricks of the mind. And for a while, maybe you believe that. Maybe you pushed those feelings aside, tried to convince yourself that you were just being irrational. But deep down, a part of you always knew better. A part of you always felt that there was something more to it. That these weren't just random experiences, but signs, clues, reminders of something bigger than yourself. And if you really stop to think about it, you'll see that they were always leading you somewhere. Every strange occurrence, every unexplainable feeling, every moment that made you question reality, they were all pointing you toward the truth. That you were never meant to walk this path blindly. That from the very beginning, you were being guided, prepared, awakened to something that most people never even notice. And it wasn't just in the big moments. It was in the small ones too. The way you could feel the energy of a room the moment you walked in. The way certain people drained you while others made you feel alive. The way you've always been drawn to the mysteries of life, searching for answers that others never even thought to ask. There were moments in your childhood where you questioned things that no one else seemed to notice. Maybe you looked up at the sky and felt something calling you, something you couldn't explain. Maybe you had thoughts about existence that seemed too complex for your age. Or maybe you felt an unshakable connection to something beyond this world, a presence, an energy, something that made you feel like there was more to life than what you could see. And the older you got, the harder it became to ignore. But here's the part no one tells you. These signs weren't just for you to notice. They were for you to remember who you are, to remember why you're here. Because the truth is, some people spend their entire lives ignoring these signs, brushing them off as meaningless. But you never could. No matter how much you tried, no matter how many times you told yourself to stop overthinking, the signs kept appearing. And now, you're beginning to understand why. Because once you see them for what they really are, you can never unsee them. And once you realize that they were never coincidences, that they were messages meant to wake you up, everything changes. Because now you have a choice. Do you keep pretending that these experiences were nothing more than accidents? Or do you finally accept that you were always meant to see what others don't? That you were never just another person moving through life without purpose? That you were always meant for something more? And if that's true, if the signs were always there, if they were leading you somewhere, then the real question is, what happens when you finally start listening? There are things in life that don't make sense until much later. The moments of pain, the struggles, the times you felt like the world was against you. At the time, they seemed unfair. You wondered why things were harder for you. Why you felt everything so deeply. Why you couldn't just go through life like everyone else, accepting things the way they were. But now, you're beginning to understand. These experiences weren't just obstacles. They were lessons. They were preparation. Because those who are meant for something greater don't get an easy path. They get a path that forces them to awaken. Think about it. Since childhood, you faced challenges that most people around you didn't seem to experience in the same way. Maybe you felt misunderstood, even in your own home. Maybe you were the one who always saw things differently, who asked too many questions, who never quite fit in. You learned early on that the way you perceived the world wasn't the way others did. You could see beneath the surface of things, feel the energy in a room, sense when something wasn't right. But instead of being encouraged to explore this, you were told to suppress it, to be normal, to stop being so sensitive. And maybe for a while you tried. You tried to silence that part of you, to blend in, to follow the rules. But no matter how much you tried, something inside you resisted. You felt like you were being pulled in two directions, one part of you wanting to belong, the other part of you knowing that you never truly could. And that battle inside you, it was never about fitting in. It was about remembering. Because the truth is, being different was never a punishment. It was a sign that you were meant to see the world in a way others couldn't. A sign that you were being shaped for something beyond the ordinary. And the struggles you faced, they weren't there to break you. They were there to strengthen you, to teach you things that no book ever could, to give you the kind of wisdom that only comes from experience. Look at your life. Look at the things you've overcome. The times you thought you wouldn't make it, but somehow you did. The nights you felt completely alone, yet something inside you refused to give up. The moments when life knocked you down, but you got back up anyway. That resilience, that depth, that ability to keep going despite everything, that's what sets you apart. That's what makes you different. And that's why you were never meant for an ordinary path. Because those who are chosen don't get to walk an easy road. They don't get to live in ignorance, to move through life without questioning anything. They are tested, pushed, shaped by fire, not because they are being punished, but because they are being prepared for something greater, for something the world isn't ready for. And maybe until now, you thought your struggles were just random events, that the pain you felt was just a series of unfortunate experiences. But what if they weren't? What if everything, every heartbreak, every loss, every moment of doubt was never meant to break you, but to reveal you? What if the weight you've carried wasn't a burden, but a responsibility? Because those who are meant to lead, to awaken others, to change the world, must first go through their own transformation. They must first face their own darkness so they can understand how to guide others through theirs. And if you look back, you'll see that every moment of suffering shaped you in ways you never could have imagined. The empathy you have, the way you can understand pain in others, the way you can see through people's masks, it all came from what you've been through. The things that hurt you the most also taught you the most. And that's not a coincidence. That's how it was always meant to be. But here's what most people don't realize. Being chosen isn't just about having gifts. It's not just about seeing the world differently. It comes with something else. Something most people aren't ready for. Because when you have a purpose greater than yourself, the world will try to stop you before you can realize it. It will try to convince you that you're broken, that you're weak, that you're imagining things. It will push you to doubt yourself, to question everything, to believe that you are not enough. Because if you wake up, if you truly step into who you were meant to be, you become powerful. And the world isn't built for people like you to be powerful. It's built to keep you asleep. And that's why your struggles have been so relentless. Because the world has been trying to break you before you can realize who you really are. But it hasn't broken you, has it? No matter how much pain you faced, no matter how many times you felt like giving up, you're still here. Still searching. Still feeling that pull inside you, the one that won't let you settle for a life that doesn't feel right. And now you know why. Because you were never meant to settle. You were meant to rise. And now, the real question is, what happens next? What happens when you stop seeing your past as something that held you back and start seeing it as the thing that shaped you for what's coming? Because once you understand that everything was preparing you, once you realize that your struggles weren't random, but intentional, you'll never see yourself the same way again. There was a time when you tried to be like everyone else. A time when you ignored the voice inside you, convinced yourself that if you just followed the rules, if you just did what was expected, life would become easier. You pushed aside your intuition, silenced your questions, convinced yourself that maybe, just maybe, you were the one who needed to change. But no matter how much you tried, something inside you refused. There was always a part of you that fought back, that couldn't fully accept the world the way it was. And that resistance, it wasn't weakness. It wasn't a flaw. It was proof that no matter how much the world tried to mold you into something smaller, it couldn't erase who you really are. Since childhood, you felt the weight of expectation. The pressure to conform, to blend in, to accept things as they are. Society teaches you from an early age that success means following the blueprint, go to school, get a job, build a stable life. Don't ask too many questions. Don't challenge the system. Just do what everyone else is doing. And for most people, that's enough. They follow the script, they build lives that look perfect on the outside, and they never stop to wonder if there's something more. But for you, that never felt right, did it? Because you were never meant to fit into a system that was built to keep you asleep. You felt it in the way certain environments drained you, in the way meaningless conversations left you empty, in the way your soul rebelled against routine and repetition. You weren't satisfied with surface-level answers. You weren't willing to just accept things as they were. You needed depth, truth, purpose. And when you couldn't find it in the world around you, you started searching for it elsewhere. You started questioning. And that's when everything changed. Because the moment you started questioning, the world pushed back. The moment you stopped blindly following, people around you became uncomfortable. You were labeled as difficult, too intense, too sensitive. You saw through illusions, and that made people uneasy. You refused to accept a life that didn't align with your soul, and that made others resent you. Because deep down, they saw in you something they had long buried in themselves, the courage to seek more, the willingness to break free. And instead of facing their own doubts, instead of questioning their own path, they tried to make you feel like you were the problem. And maybe for a while you believed them. You wondered if they were right, if you were just being unrealistic, if you were expecting too much from life. But no matter how many times you tried to silence yourself, the feeling never went away. The truth never stopped calling you. Because the thing about purpose is that it doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It waits. It lingers. It finds ways to remind you that it's still there, waiting for you to finally stop pretending. And now you see it clearly. The world didn't try to change you because there was something wrong with you. It tried to change you because it knew who you were becoming. It knew that once you saw through the illusion, once you realized that you were never meant to live a life of quiet desperation, you would be unstoppable. And that scared people. Because a person who knows their power, a person who refuses to be controlled by fear, cannot be manipulated. They cannot be silenced. And that is exactly what you were always meant to be, someone who breaks the cycle, someone who wakes up, someone who leads. But here's the truth most people don't realize. When you stop fitting into the world around you, it means you're finally starting to fit into the life you were meant for. The resistance you felt, the loneliness, the feeling of being different, it was never a curse. It was a calling, a sign that you were never meant to be like everyone else. A reminder that you have a purpose beyond what society tells you. And now that you know this, you can never go back. You can never unsee the truth. The world tried to convince you that your difference was something to be ashamed of, that your refusal to conform was a sign of failure. But now you understand, it was never about blending in. It was about remembering who you are. And the moment you fully step into that, the moment you stop apologizing for being different, everything changes. Because when you embrace your true nature, you stop looking for approval in places that were never meant for you. You stop trying to force yourself into spaces that can't hold your energy. And instead, you start creating your own path, the one you were always meant to walk. There comes a time when the signs become impossible to ignore, when the small whispers turn into undeniable truths, when the coincidences start forming a pattern so clear that even the deepest doubts can't silence it anymore. You've felt it, haven't you? That shift, that knowing, that realization that everything, every moment of struggle, every feeling of not belonging, every time you questioned if there was something more, was leading you here. To this moment, to this awakening. Maybe it didn't happen all at once. Maybe it started slowly with little things, an intuition so strong it scared you, a dream that felt more like a memory, a feeling deep inside telling you that the life you were living wasn't the one you were meant for. Maybe you started seeing the patterns, recognizing the moments when the universe was nudging you in a direction you couldn't yet understand. And the more you noticed, the more you couldn't unsee. The more you tried to go back to who you used to be, the more impossible it became. Because once you wake up, there is no going back to sleep. And that's the terrifying part, isn't it? Realizing that the life you thought you were supposed to live was never really yours. That the expectations, the rules, the path you were taught to follow were designed for someone else, someone who wasn't meant to question, someone who wasn't meant to break free. But you were never meant to be that person. That's why you've always felt like you were walking through life in a body that didn't quite fit, in a world that didn't quite make sense. Because you were never meant to be just another part of the system. You were meant to wake up from it. But waking up isn't easy. It shakes you. It forces you to face everything you've ignored, everything you've been running from. The truth about who you are, the truth about the world, the truth about what it really means to be here. And once you see it, you can't pretend anymore. You can't pretend that you don't feel the pull towards something greater. You can't pretend that you don't know you were meant for more. And the most painful part? Realizing that you spent so much time trying to be someone you never were. But here's the thing, none of that time was wasted. Every detour, every moment of doubt, every time you felt lost was part of your awakening. Because you needed to feel the weight of who you weren't before you could fully step into who you are. You needed to experience what it was like to live in the wrong frequency, to be surrounded by things that drained you, to walk a path that never felt right, because only by knowing what isn't yours can you truly recognize what is. And now you do. You recognize it. You feel it. That undeniable knowing inside you, the one that tells you that everything is about to change, that you can't keep living the way you used to, that you can't keep ignoring the truth of what's calling you, because ignoring is no longer an option. The restlessness you feel, the exhaustion, the dissatisfaction, it's not because you're lost. It's because you're resisting the path that was always meant for you. And maybe you're afraid of what happens when you fully step into this new version of yourself. Afraid of what you might lose, of who you might become, of the uncertainty that lies ahead. But let me ask you this, what's scarier? Stepping into the unknown, or staying trapped in a life that isn't yours? Continuing to live as a version of yourself that doesn't feel real, or finally allowing yourself to be who you were always meant to be? Because at the end of the day, the choice isn't between comfort and discomfort. It's between awakening and staying asleep, between truly living and simply existing. And deep down, you already know what you have to do. You've known it all along. The signs have been there, the truth has been calling you, and now it's time. Time to stop waiting for permission. Time to stop doubting whether you're ready. Time to stop pretending that you don't feel it. Because the truth is, if you weren't ready, you wouldn't be here. If you weren't meant to awaken, you wouldn't be feeling this right now. And the only thing left to do is finally step into it. Because once you take that first real step, everything changes. The path starts unfolding in ways you never expected. The right people appear. The right opportunities come. The things that once felt impossible suddenly start making sense. Not because it becomes easy, not because there won't still be challenges, but because you'll finally be in alignment with what was always meant for you. And when that happens, you won't just be living, you'll be fully, truly awake. And now, the only question that remains is, are you ready to finally answer the call? There comes a point when you realize that there is no going back. No more pretending, no more doubting, no more trying to be someone you're not just to fit into a life that was never meant for you. You feel it, don't you? That shift. That moment when everything inside you refuses to keep playing by the same rules, refuses to keep following a script that was never yours. Because once you've awakened, once you've seen the truth, once you've felt what it means to be fully aware of who you are, nothing else will ever be enough again. Maybe for a long time, you were waiting for something. A sign, a confirmation, a moment of absolute certainty that would erase all your fears and doubts. But that's not how this works. Purpose doesn't come with guarantees. It doesn't wait until you feel ready. It calls you before you think you are. It pushes you toward the unknown, forces you to take steps that make no logical sense, asks you to trust in something you can't yet see. And the only way forward is to say yes before you have all the answers. And this is where most people stop. Right at the edge, right at the moment when everything could change, fear creeps in. Fear of failure. Fear of stepping into something bigger than yourself. Fear of what happens when you finally let go of the life you've outgrown. And if you let that fear win, if you let it convince you to wait just a little longer, to hold on just a little tighter, you stay stuck. Not because you weren't meant for more, but because you weren't willing to claim it. But that's not who you are, is it? Because if it were, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have come this far, you wouldn't have fought through everything you faced, you wouldn't have spent your whole life searching for something greater if you weren't meant to find it. And now here you are, standing at the threshold of everything you've ever known and everything you were meant to become. The only thing left to do is step forward. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. There will be days when you question yourself, when you wonder if you're making a mistake, when the old version of you, the one who is still trapped in doubt and fear, tries to pull you back into the familiar. But the familiar isn't where you're meant to be anymore. You've outgrown it. And the moment you choose to stop shrinking yourself to fit into a life that can no longer contain you, the moment you fully embrace who you are, everything starts to shift. Because stepping into your purpose isn't just about what you do, it's about who you become. It's about the way you carry yourself, the way you show up in the world, the way you trust yourself even when nothing makes sense. It's about finally seeing yourself as the person you were always meant to be, instead of the person the world tried to convince you to become. And when you do that, when you fully embody your truth, life starts meeting you at that level. Opportunities arise. Doors open. People enter your life who reflect back to you the version of yourself you were always meant to step into. And the best part, It doesn't happen because you have it all figured out. It doesn't happen because you suddenly become fearless. It happens because despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, you decide to move forward anyway. Because that's what purpose demands. That's what awakening requires. A willingness to step into the unknown, to trust that what's waiting for you on the other side is far greater than anything you could have imagined. So now ask yourself, what happens next? What happens when you stop waiting? When you stop second-guessing yourself? When you finally decide that you are done living a life that doesn't feel like yours? Because the truth is, no one is coming to save you. No one is going to give you permission to step into your calling. No one is going to make this choice for you. It has to be you. It has always been you. And now the only question left to answer is, are you finally ready to choose yourself? If this video has changed your spiritual journey and helped you connect with your universal strength, subscribe to the channel, leave a like below, and activate the notification bell so we can notify you when new content arrives. We also suggest watching the video indicated on the screen so you can continue your journey of spiritual growth and inner evolution of knowledge. Thank you for staying with us until the end, and see you in the next video.